Hi, and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. Today, we are talking all about recovery from childhood trauma and neglect. Now, do you believe that difficult or painful experiences in your childhood are somehow defining you today? Perhaps you believe you are somehow disadvantaged, damaged, or even worthless because of what you experienced many decades ago as a child. Well, in this teaching, you'll learn why childhood trauma does not define who you are and the steps you can take to recover and move on from your past. Okay, David. Now, I know you work with many clients all over the world on issues of childhood trauma. How common is it that your clients from all walks of life somehow believe that what happened to them as a child is somehow defining who they are today?
I think it's extremely common. They probably wouldn't use the words that we would use when they first started to do the work, because they would not understand or perceive themselves as falling into the victim mode or defining themselves as that. They see that childhood trauma as a kind of something that they that they can't let go of. It's almost like that they're holding on to. And when I offer words like, well, this is defining you, or you're not a victim, they find this very challenging at the beginning because they're so used to holding on and pulling this trauma along with them on every day of their life. And that's why we do the work to change the perception on how you view these childhood experiences.
And so what kind of range of childhood experiences are we talking about that your clients are still holding on to today and letting it define them?
You know, Alex, that's the number one question. I'm so glad you asked that, because it doesn't matter. Do not compare your childhood with somebody else's and say, oh, look, they were much worse than I was. If it's important to you, it's important to you. And that's it. It doesn't matter what that could be. That could be something that somebody else could think about as minor, being bullied at school. It could be and anything. It doesn't matter. But if it's important to you, then if I'm working with you, it's important to me. And that's what we have to address, because the word trauma is something that you've brought up to try and understand what's happened. And just the word in itself makes it into something. It doesn't matter what it is. It's a trauma to you. If it's a trauma to you, it's a trauma to me. And then we have to deconstruct it, because that's the process of the golden thread, is to deconstruct it. We can't change what happened in the past. Remember that. You can't change it. It's happened. You're already victorious. You came through it. If this is you, you've come through it. Well done. But we can change your perception. We can widen your perception so you're not trapped in that same mindset.
Just for our new listeners, when you say golden thread, you're talking about the golden thread process therapy model that you work through with all your clients. And that's, as you say, it's almost stepping backwards in time to get to the original incident. So it could be one incident in childhood, or it could be a series of incidences that have created this, I guess, what the client may call a childhood trauma, but essentially it's like an overwhelm of emotions that they experienced at that time, which is then kind of put on repeat, like an echo through the rest of their life, because they're holding on to the memory of that event. And is it like that, the memory of the event that keeps constantly recreating the trauma, the emotional trauma for the client?
Well, it's very interesting, because the way you've explained it, most of my clients will not be repeating the thought or the belief. They'll be trying to avoid the emotional feeling. So what they're doing is they're living their life basically saying, I do not want to repeat that feeling, that emotion, because that emotion was so overwhelming, so strong, so life-changing. I do not want to repeat that. And the golden thread process is a process that goes past the emotion to the core, to what you think, what you believe, and as you say, your memory, because they won't want to be changing that. That will be fixed, and the process is to change the thought.
So the memory of the emotional experience, the response, the painful, heartbreaking experience that we may have had as a child, whether it's from criticism from a parent, bullying at school, or something more serious such as physical or sexual or emotional abuse of some kind, what you're saying is we are spending the rest of our lives trying to avoid experiencing those same emotions that we had as a child in our adult life. And so that is, would you say then that constantly trying to avoid, strategizing our life, strategizing our relationships, that is what makes us believe that somehow we are now damaged or a different person?
Yes, so what's happened is instead of looking at the situation from now a mature point of view, they still continue to look at it as a childlike point of view. So they don't change their thoughts and their beliefs. They're now reactive to their emotions. They do not accept that they have created the emotion. And so therefore, they set up the strategies, as you said, their life strategies, as a kind of an avoidance of the emotion, or what my clients will tell me, they're trying to be emotionally safe or emotionally protected. Now, if you have one of these thoughts in your mind as you're watching this video, have you ever thought, I would like to get to a place where I'm emotionally safe or I am emotionally protected? You are running this scenario. You are not believing that you create your emotions. You are believing that someone else or a situation creates the emotion, and you are the victim. And you're not. And that's what defines you. If you then live your life from that basis, that's what's defining you.
But as a child, David, we can look back and we can think, well, that person mistreated me.
Yes.
Or that person abused me, or that person criticized me or neglected me, whatever. And that was a fact.
Yes.
And that actually when we created within ourselves, so following your model, in response to that abuse, neglect, criticism, judgment as a child, it was perfectly natural for us to create uncomfortable, painful, unwanted emotional feelings as a child.
Because we didn't have more mature knowledge.
Yeah, but now we need to understand that if someone abuses us, neglects us, criticizes us, judges us, treats us unfairly, that's still not right.
No.
That's still not okay. That's still not acceptable. However, now as an adult, we are in control of the emotions that we choose to create in response to that. So I think for me, it seems like it's perfectly natural if someone treats us really harshly as an immediate reaction to have a red light emotional feeling. So, because that's then telling us, well, something is definitely wrong with this situation. But the issue is if we keep on creating the emotional feelings, so anxiety, fear, anger, hopelessness, whatever it may be, if we keep on creating those red light emotional feelings, then that's something we need to look at.
Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that, because when you're a child, as you said, from a childlike perception. It is quite natural and normal and probably saved your life to create the red light emotion. But it also affected your thinking. And this is what it normally does. Instead of being able to analyze the situation and see that the problem lies with your parent or the person who's abusing you, it's they have the problem. What the child does is what we call the vow. The child says, there must be something wrong with me because this has happened to me. There's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I'm unlovable. I can't cope. So in that moment, what the child is doing is creating a vow and defining themselves. Then they create the emotional feelings. Now, the vow stays in place as like the foundation or the root, and then they live their life reacting to emotions. The golden thread process is to get past the emotion and get down to the belief. Because if you believe there's something wrong with you, and then as you said quite rightly, when something happens in your adult life, if somebody is aggressive, mistreats you, the boss mistreats you, your partner mistreats you, a friend treats you wrongly, you are hardwired back to that same belief.
Yeah, it's me.
It's me.
It's me. It can't be them.
It always happens
It's
to me.
me.
Look at the evidence.
I
And
deserve this.
thank you.
They are mistreating me because I'm useless, because I'm not lovable, because I don't deserve to be treated well.
You see, and that's when I say to my clients, please give me the evidence of why you're unlovable. They never give me the evidence. They give me the result of thinking that they're not lovable. Because what they've created a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's almost like this self-fulfilling prophecy of looking for the wrong partner, going into the wrong job, not standing up for yourself, people-pleasing people. It gives you negative results. And then what that does, it confirms the wrong vow that you made as a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old child when there was nothing wrong with you. Nothing. The problem lay with a person who was mistreating you, who couldn't deal with their emotions, normally the case. And that could be parents, or it could be people at school, it could be teachers, it could be your siblings. They're having problems with their emotions. And what you've done, you classified yourself, and my word would be defined yourself.
Yeah.
And therefore, then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, or what you told me was called confirmation bias.
Yeah.
So you're biased now, you look at everything through
It's like
that
the
lens.
default.
Exactly.
So I just want to pick that apart a bit more because I think that's absolutely fundamental. What you're saying is, as a child, a challenging, difficult, unfamiliar, unwanted experience
that you would call
a trauma
Yeah.
in childhood. For a lot of your clients and a lot of people, they create this vow. They blame themselves for what's happening because they couldn't possibly blame their parents, their grandparents, their teachers, their older brother or sister, their auntie or uncle, or whoever it is. Because as a child, we look up to these people. They're our reference point. So we blame ourselves.
Yes.
And then as soon as we put that vow in place, that then forms almost like the filter, the lens through which we then perceive how the world and other people treat us.
Yes.
So, as you said, if we then encounter difficulties with people in adulthood, challenging situations, people mistreating us, disrespecting us, etc., if we have that vow in place, we blame ourselves.
Yes.
Now, if we don't have the vow in place, if we are more balanced in our thinking, we're not blaming ourselves, we're not criticizing ourselves, it doesn't mean to say that we don't encounter difficult people mistreating us. But the big difference is we don't blame ourselves. We say, hold on a minute, this is not right. And we put boundaries in place. Or we step away, or we speak our mind, or we speak our truth, and we say, no, this is unacceptable. But if we have the vow in place, we're blaming ourselves. We're on a completely different trajectory.
And that's exactly right, Alex. And what makes it more difficult for people is one factor. When you've explained that, you didn't add in one factor: emotions. So when you're a child, you're experiencing this emotion that you would call a trauma. You say then to yourself, it must be me. I'm part of this. It wasn't for me. There's something wrong with me. I'm not right. I'm not good enough. I can't cope. I'm unlovable. I'm unworthy. I have no value. And then the emotion is very powerful. Now, the vow stays in place at like the foundation, but then the emotion takes over. And then, as you quite rightly said, you are now your filter. The way you look at people, the world, relationships, yourself, the career, everything is looking through this emotional filter. And you live your life based on your emotions. And most of my clients will be almost proud. They'll say, well, I'm a very emotional person. I react on my emotions. But I want you to react on your intellect, on your thinking, on your beliefs, on your principles. This to me is the most important thing. The Chinese word for this is Te, in the Tao Te Ching. Te, your principles, what you stand for. I would say that has to be your truth, your honesty, your integrity, not your emotions. Your emotions are created from that basis. So the way out of this, a lot of my clients go, this is so difficult, this emotional maze, this is so hard. I'm saying, no, it's much easier than what you believe. Because instead of reacting and living your life through your emotional state, you should be living your life through what I would call shen, your spiritual state. How do you connect to your spiritual state? Truth, honesty, integrity. Never lie to yourself. Do not lie to other people. Be truthful, be honest, and above all, walk the walk and talk the talk. Integrity. Live, and I often say in these videos, would you say that to your physical child? And when I say that to my clients, they look horrified. They say, of course I wouldn't. That would be tantamount to child abuse. But you say to yourself, where's the integrity in that? And that's where you have to stop it. You have to stop. And you have to reframe yourself. And the self-talk, the things you say to yourself, is that the truth? Have you no value? You can imagine over the years, I've had literally thousands of clients trying to convince me they have no value, they have no worth. The worth is given to them externally. It's not. It cannot be. How can worth is not a commodity that somebody gives you or takes away from you? And this is why this trauma is so important, because it affects your identity, the way you look at yourself.
So when people say my childhood trauma is defining me now, the reality is the vow they put in place about who they believe they are, which was created in childhood, and the emotions, the red light emotions that vow creates, and then the reaction of wanting to run away from those red light emotions, that's what's defining them.
Exactly.
But they haven't been, I mean, for the most part with your clients, we're talking about emotional abuse of some kind. We're not talking about physical damage as a child, although there are some situations where that occurs. But for most people, we're talking about emotional trauma. So there is no lasting legacy of the childhood experience beyond the vow and the emotions it's creating for us.
See, so I often say to my clients, childhood trauma does not define you unless you want it to define you. Unless you built your model of who you are and how the world is and how other people are is built on that model. Because as you quite rightly said, it's like a filter. It's a filter. It's imagine you've got sunglasses. If your sunglasses were shaded yellow, you would see the world yellow. If they're green, you would see the world green. And so this is why the golden thread to find out what you believe. How many times do I say this? What do you believe? Why do you believe it? What do you believe? So if you believe I'm not good enough, why do you believe that? And most of my clients, when we get through the problems, is to say, well, it's the way that I was treated. So even if, I often say, even if your parents, your guardians, your grandparents sat around the kitchen table and said, well, our child is simply not good enough. That's it. I believe as parents, this child is not good enough. Does that make it true? Is that how you're going to live your life, on what they perceive? Even if your teacher says, well, look, you're not very bright, does that make it true? I would say absolutely, categorically, no, no, because you should define you. You are a unique spiritual person, and you are on an amazing journey. Awesome. And that's how I want you to live your life, following your potential, fulfilling what you're here to do, living from your inner knowing. And only you know that. Somebody else can't tell you that.
I think, though, David, that what you've just said makes logical sense. And why would we accept without question how other people judge us or how other people have treated us in the past as defining us? However, that part of our mind that
can I just answer that one?
Yeah.
Emotion.
Well, it's the inner child
Emotion.
responding to the emotions, the I'm going to say the word automatic emotions that those judgments from other people or that treatment from other people creates. But I know you're going to step in and say it's not automatic, but it can run almost like automatic, like in a blink of an eye.
But that's what happens as a child. To answer your questions, why do we not allow our life to be built on, you called it logic, I would call it intellect, and emotions? That's the answer. That's the key, Alex, what you just said there. When you were 6 or 7 or 8 and your parents, your teachers said something, or you were bullied at school, in that instance, like a blink of an eye, you said there must be something wrong with me, and created an overwhelming emotional feeling.
So it's the vow.
And then they become locked together. And what becomes more powerful is not what you said, but the emotion. And then you define the rest of your life trying to avoid that emotion. So that's the answer to your question, is why that is so difficult. Because they don't look at what created the emotion. The emotion fills the picture.
Yeah, and it's the vow, because as I said earlier, people will always criticize us. We will encounter people who will mistreat us or be disrespectful. That's life. That's part of living in reality. We can't close ourselves off and put ourselves in a box. The only difference, the only thing that actually makes that criticism, that judgment, that treatment more powerful is the vow, because the blink of an eye, the vow kicks in. It's me. They're right. I deserve this. I don't deserve to be loved. I don't deserve to be respected. That's the vow. If we can take the vow out of the equation, then it doesn't matter what other people think, how other people treat us, because we know we are good enough. We know we are lovable. We treat ourselves with the utmost respect. We do not talk negatively to ourselves. We do not criticize ourselves. We do not judge ourselves harshly. We are responsible for our emotions. But the vow, when we got that vow in place, it must be me, there's something wrong with me, that knocks the whole system off kilter.
And that's what people have a difficulty in accepting or grasping. That vow is like a computer program. And we're just saying it's like a blink of an eye. You don't sit there and think about it. Oh, they just criticize me. Oh, that's just like the way my father criticized me. And they criticized me and my father criticized me. So that must be right, mustn't it? You don't do that logic. It's like pre-programmed in. And that's why the golden thread is so powerful. And for a lot of my clients, uncomfortable, because we're challenging this core belief that you've had in place for tens of years. You know, if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, this vow has been in place for 30, 40, 50, 60 years without being looked at. And as I often say to my clients, I can't change it. I am not trying to change it. I'm trying to open it up, to show some light on it. I love when the Americans say the best form of disinfectant is sunlight. Open it up. Let's have a look at this vow. Let's see how strong it is. Let's see if it's right. Let's see even if your father or mother stood you against the wall and said, you have no value. Does that make it right? Are you going to live your life? Did you do everything your mother and father said to you? Truly, and now we're back to truth, honesty, integrity. Did you follow everything your mother and father told you to do, or your teacher, or your best friend, or the person who sat next to you at school? Did you follow everything they said? No. And that's the key. You have to open it up and look at it. And that is so life-changing to me. I've seen it in front of my eyes as with my clients. When we can get through the confusion, when we can get through the lies, the falseness, when we can get through the emotion and we can get to the core, now they're in control. And that's what I want. I want you to be in control.
I think, David, that what stops people from getting to that place is two things. One is that a lot of people have this fear that they don't want to go there. They don't want to open up the can of worms.
So that's an emotion.
Yeah. So their inner child, that part of their mind is, they know something is wrong. They know that it's connected to things that happened to them in childhood. They know it's affecting their health as an adult. It's affecting their relationships as an adult. It's affecting their potential as an adult. They know something is not right. And often they can try all sorts of different types of therapies that kind of skate around the edges. But the reality is they know they're not going deep enough to look to find that childhood vow we've talked about through doing the golden thread process work. So they don't want to open the Pandora's box because of the emotions they're trying to avoid, because they think if I look at this is going to create even worse emotions than I experienced as a child. Therefore, why on earth would I want to go there? But perversely, the flip side of that, I wonder, and this is kind of like a sensitive thing to say, whether some people want to keep the vow in place because the story of what happened to them as a child is very, very important to them. It's a big part of their identity, and that part of their mind, that stuck child within them, their inner child, really desperately wants some sort of acknowledgement, some sort of justice, some sort of payback or compensation for what they experienced as a child. So if they looked at the vow, let it go, just let it go, then it's like, well, hold on a minute. Nobody's acknowledged how bad my childhood was. Nobody's righted the wrong. So in your experience, is that what stops those two things, what stops people from taking those final steps to moving on?
In my experience, you're 100% absolutely correct. That's what it is. Number one is the emotion. The Pandora's box, as you called it, that's fine. They don't want to go back into the emotion. And number two, that now the story has become their identity. And my clients will often say to me, who would I be? What would life be like if I didn't have this story? And so it's become their identity. But they are not living with integrity. And that's what the difference is. It's how much you value your shen, your spirituality, who you are as a person. I believe strongly, excuse me, I believe strongly that when you let go of the story, and lots of my clients will say things like, well, it's easier, it's more familiar, I'm used to it, who would I be? This is like the known. This is another thing. I know this. You're offering me the unknown. And so, as in a way, they stay on the carousel. That's what we call the carousel of despair, going around and around, moaning and groaning and feeling sorry for themselves. Poor me, I call it. But do they really want to step off? And that's a question that only you can answer. Nobody could force you. And anybody who tells you they can, they're not being truthful, because you're a very strong, determined person. And it's only you. So what I offer them is, well, let's open it up. Let's put you in control, because all of your life you've wanted to be in control. I want you to be in control. The big difference is us. You've been trying to control other people, outside events. You want to know what's going to happen before it happens, even though you know that can't happen. I want you to control you. I want to put you in control. And if you want to stay on the carousel, then I can't stop you, because no one can stop you. But I believe that once you're in control, the unknown starts to become known. You start to have faith in yourself. You start to connect strongly with who you really are, not this image of who you think you are. You have the wrong identity. And once you connect to your true identity, then you will see all of the qualities that you have. Your determination, used correctly, your sensitivity, that you are a very sensitive person and you are in control of your own sensitivity, your creative imagination. All of these things that are your keeping suppressed now becomes open, because now you are living in Wu Wei. You are living in your flow. As Alex said earlier, this does not mean that everything suddenly works out right. Bunny rabbits jump around the fields, the sun is always shining, roses grow around the door. But this means when you meet adversity, adversity defines who you are. And now you start to flow through adversities using all of your truth, your honesty, your integrity, your skills, your creativity, everything that makes you who you are. And that's why we do these videos, for this reason.
And so really convincing our inner child that there is another identity that we have been suppressing because we've been so tied into the vow and the story, and that only by letting go of the vow, only by letting go of the story, are we allowing that identity, which does exist now. It's almost like it's been, it's a beautiful flower that hasn't been watered. Only then can we nurture this flower and give it attention and allow it to grow and flourish.
Alex, I love the word inspirational, because when we're tied and we're hooked into the vow that I would sometimes prefer to call the lie, it's a lie. Your life is in the dungeons. It's closed down. The doors are locked. As I often say to you, when I do the golden thread work, I don't find the inner child's a monster, evil, out to get you, trying to screw up your life. I see the opposite. I see an innocent child huddled in a corner, scared of its own shadow. And it needs somebody to come in and put the lights on, to talk to it, to answer its questions, because this little child is creative. This little child is sensitive. This little child is determined. This little child is inspirational, living in their spirit. And they only want you as the parent or the adult to come along and hold their hand and walk with them a few steps. And like all children, it always reminds me of when I was teaching my own physical child to ride a bicycle. At the beginning, he wanted the trainer wheels on and he wanted me to hold the saddle and the handlebars. Then we took the trainer wheels off. Then he didn't want me to hold the handlebars. Then he didn't want me, and he was off. He was off. And then he didn't even want me around. And that's how your inner child will be. If we can just hold their hand in the first few steps, be there with them, inspire them, build on truth, don't let them lie, don't believe their lies, walk with them, and then I love what the Chinese say, the lotus blossom opens. When the sun shines, the lotus blossom opens. And that true inspiration of who you really are, not defined by your childhood, because the truth is you are not a victim of your childhood. In fact, you're victorious because you've come through it. It's in the rear view mirror. Why do you want to keep looking back? Look forward. That's what I would want for you.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. Well, I really, really hope this teaching has helped you understand that this childhood trauma or any experiences you had in childhood do not define you now as an adult. We have so many more resources to help you with this topic. We've got other teachings on the childhood vow. We've got other teachings on the childhood story. Lots of resources on inner child healing and inner child work, which I will put links to in the show notes for you. David works every week with clients all over the world by Zoom video call, doing this golden thread process work on issues around childhood trauma and childhood neglect and inner child work. And if you are interested in working one-to-one with David, I shall also put links in the show notes so you can learn more about his consultations. And finally, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new teachings every week and we would love to share your journey with you. Bye-bye.